All right, folks. So, uh, welcome to another episode of Come Cloud with Us. Apologies, we were having some technical difficulties, so we're a couple of minutes delayed. So, my name is Abdul Kazi, and I have my partner in crime, Chris Gill, with me. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Good, good. It's I think we had a little bit of rain in the cloud today, so what can we say? Things happen, things shift. We get wrong URLs. It is what it is. But we're here. We're happy to have you. I think a few of us are a little under the weather, but it's that time of the year. Man, it was beautiful today in Rochester, New York. So I don't know about the rest of you or the rest of our viewership here, but man, it was like 75 degrees. That's unheard of in upstate New York. So we'll take it as long as we can. But thanks for asking.
Yeah, it's been sitting in the 20s up in Toronto, so I'm not sure what's going on with the weather, but yeah, yeah, it's how's the weather up there, Alpha?
Yeah, it's a rainy. Here also rainy. Yeah,
Okay, wow.
yeah, yeah,
But thank you so much for joining in. I know it's almost midnight for you, so yeah, thanks for joining. And
yeah,
I know with the time shift, things kind of change, but yeah, today we have a very special guest joining from the UK. So this is truly virtual event. Three people in three different countries. Like you can only get this in a virtual event, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, so Alba, how did you get into IT? What is your background? Kind of talk about to us, and where do you work? Like, how did you get into Azure?
yeah,
Give some background.
yeah. Sure. So I study master in computer science in UK, and then I joined IT company here in UK as well, and then slowly I got in Azure world. So yeah, I certified in a few Azure data engineer, developer, and Azure data science. Yeah,
No, that's
and
amazing. Actually, yeah,
yeah,
that's a good
yeah,
field right now to be in.
Yeah,
yeah.
awesome.
And last 2 years I'm working with a cluster reply in UK. So I'm working on data engineering project at the moment. So yeah.
Very nice, very nice. So, is it only specific to Azure, or are you doing other third-party providers as well, like Databricks and Datadogs and
Yeah, I have worked with the Databricks, but not hugely. So yeah, mainly on focus on Azure side. Yeah.
nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, so shall we kick it off, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's step into it. You're here to talk about sentiment analysis, right? And
Yeah.
so let's jump into it.
Yeah.
If you want to share your screen, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Let me start.
Of course, I'm looking down. I'm like, man, I should have got coffee too.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with the presentation. So
Beautiful.
yeah. Okay, thank you all and welcome to my session, Sentiment Analysis using Azure Data Factory and Azure Cognitive Service here at Come Cloud with us. In this session, we are going to see a quick overview of these two Azure services, and then we see how we can apply a sentiment analysis on your data without writing a code in programming language or without prior knowledge of maths or data science. So it's purely no code or low code. So this is me, and you can find me in LinkedIn or you can find me in Twitter. And end of the session, you will find a code repo in this repository in GitHub. So let's start with today's agenda. So today's agenda mainly divided into three parts. In first two part, we're going to see a quick overview of these two Azure services, and third part, we're going to see a sentiment analysis with a demo. So let's start with Azure Data Factory. So what is Azure Data Factory? So Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based data integration service that orchestrates and automates the movement and transformation of your data at a scale. It is also Azure Platform as a Service, and it's a serverless. And because of these two reasons, you don't need to worry about software installation, web server configuration, or implementing a monitor tools or things like that, because Azure will do it for you. So you can fully focus on implementation, and thus you can build it very quickly. And because of the above two reason, you only pay for what you have used. So if your Azure Data Factory is not running, then you won't get any charge for uh, execution. But however, you get a small amount of charge, which is storage one, which can be negligible. So it's a cost effective. And last but not least, it's a low code or no code solution. So you can quickly build your pipeline by just a drag and drop components, and you can orchestrate your pipeline. You can automate it using very quickly with the no code or low code techniques. So now let's see a key components of Azure Data Factory. So you will get idea what you need to do when you create your first Azure Data Factory. So linked services. So linked services hold the connection sinks. It's like a connection manager. It's authorize your source or sink data source, so it can be consumed by Azure Data Factory other components. Next one is a data sets. Data sets is a structure of your data or a metadata or reference of your data. So for example, if your link service is holding the connection string of Azure SQL Server, then your data set in form of the table. But if your link service is pointing to a REST API, then your data sets in form of the JSON file. So basically it's a table or folder or file. So it's represent your metadata of your data. Next one is activities. So activities do a specific task. For example, copy activity, copy a data from source to sink. Machine learning activity allow you to execute a machine learning task in a Azure Data Factory, which is a external activity because it's another Azure service. You have Azure function. Also, you have a general activities like for each loop, and you have so many other activities. So you just need to drag and drop, and you need to set few properties if you want to use that activities. So that is activities. And pipelines. So pipeline is a logical group of your activity. So in your pipeline, you have activities, and activity can be parallel or sequential, and it's achieve a specific business outcome. And last, which is a triggers. So once you have ready your pipeline, you can trigger it very quickly and very easily. And here also you can use like already available in Azure Data Factory techniques like when file created or deleted from blob storage, or you can write down your own code using custom activities as well. So that is a trigger which basically run your pipelines on a specific time. Like if you schedule your pipeline on a early morning or 5 p.m. in evening, then it run at that time your pipelines. So now let's see what can you do in Azure Data Factory. So you get idea why you need Azure Data Factory. So you can copy your data. So you can copy your data from various different sources. For example, it can be your data in other cloud services, for example, AWS and Google Cloud. Your data can be on on-premise system or like SQL Server or Oracle Server or SFTP. Your data can be from the Salesforce or CRM 365, or it can be Azure Function or HTTP Web Call or SDPI. So this is a sample data source. So you first select your source, and then you select your sink. And your sink or destination data source can be same or different. And once you run your pipeline, you move your data from one source to another source. So this is called data movements. And in Azure Data Factory, you have around 100 data sources available, which you can use as a source or as a sink. And you can find more information using this link, and this is called a data movements. So you can do a data movements using Azure Data Factory. So now let's see next one. What else you can do in Azure Data Factory? So you can do a transformation. So for that, it's use a mapping data flow. And behind the scene is use a Spark cluster. So without writing a code in programming language like Scala, Python, and Java, you still get the same features by just drag and drop components. So for that, here you select your source, and then you will apply some transformation. So here you can join two or more than one data source. You can apply union. You can use a window functions like how you do in SQL language. So it's similar way you can do it here by just drag and drop components. And once you're happy with your transformation, you can select your sink or destination data source, and that's it. So once you run your pipeline, you will have a finalized output which has a transformation, and then you can store the result on a data source. So in Azure Data Factory, for mapping data flow, there are around 18 data sources available at the moment. So if your source is not available in this list, then you can use a commonly used data source, for example, blob storage or Azure SQL Server or like that. So this link can help you to find out what data source you can use as a source or as a sink or both of them. And this is called a data transformation. So you can do a data transformation in Azure Data Factory. And data movements and data transformations are very important part in your modern data warehouse. So now let's see what else you can do in Azure Data Factory. So as you know now, there are 5 main components in Azure Data Factory, and when you create those components using UI, behind the scene is generate a JSON code for you. And this code, you don't need to worry about it at all because it's generated automatically. And this code you can use as a source control, and that later on you can use it as a CI/CD pipeline like continuous integration and continuous delivery. It also provides you built-in Git integration. So there are two options available. You can use Azure DevOps Kit or you can use a GitHub. And again, it's a few button clicks away. You can very quickly set up your Git repository or DevOps using the GitHub or Azure DevOps. And you can monitor your components using Azure Data Factory using the UI. And you can manage your Azure Data Factory component using UI as well. And last but not least, we can see triggers one. So you can trigger your pipeline. So I think I already explained it earlier that you can trigger your pipeline based on a specific time. So your pipeline will execute when time comes. When file created or deleted from blob storage, you can trigger your pipeline, or you can use your custom activity, and you can write down your code in Azure Function or Azure Logic Apps or PowerShell or even C# code. So this is Azure Data Factory quick overview. Now let's move into next one, which is Azure Cognitive Service. So Azure Cognitive Service is a wider service, and you can use for audio file, video file, or text. So here in this example, I have used for a text analytics. So it has for a language, like Azure Cognitive Service for a language. So let's see what is a sentiment analysis and what we have in what stuff we have in Azure worlds. So Azure, we have a Azure Cognitive Service for a language, which help you to do a sentiment analysis on your data. So this service first read a data. So like it's apply a analytics on your text or paragraphs in your documents. It can have a simple sentence or it can have a complex sentence or big paragraphs. So then it will extract, classify and understand a text within your documents. And finally, it give a labels. It give a sentiment labels based on a scores. Its score will be from 0 to 1. Between them, you will get a score, and based on that, it applies sentiment labels. And this label can be like positive, negative, or neutral. And behind the scene, it's use a natural language processing technique or algorithm. However, you don't need to worry about it at all because this is a no code or low code solution. So you can directly consume it very easily and very quickly. And this is a no code or low code solution. So if you want to use this one, then first you need to create a language resource in a Azure portal or via code. And once you create it, it gives you two important things. It gives you a REST API endpoints and it gives you a key value. So you just need to use those two important things and you can consume this sentiment analysis in your code via code or a no code low code way. So if you want to write down code, then you can write down it by downloading the SDK in your C# or Java or a Python or other language, and then you can consume it, or you can just consume it using no code low code way. So in this example, we're going to see a no code low code way. So this is a quick overview of sentiment analysis using the Azure Cognitive Service. So now let's move into a demo. So in this demo, we are using the Azure Data Factory and Azure Cognitive Service, and these both are a no-code or low-code techniques we are using. So before we going to see a demo, let's quickly see a high-level design. So in this demo, we have customer feedbacks in a Azure Blob Storage in a feedback test in container. And we have a Azure Cognitive Service, which is another Azure service or resource, and it's do a text analytics. Then we have Azure SQL Server, which is it stores the outputs or results, and we have a Azure Key Vaults. Azure Key Vaults we have used for a two purpose. One which is a security, and another is a central place. So it's hold the secrets in a central place. So for example, if you have a same Azure SQL database used by 3 different systems, so if you changing the password of your Azure SQL Server, then you have to change in each systems or 3 systems because you have used in a 3 different system. But if you use Key Vault, then you only need to change it in a one place without changing any 3 systems. You only need to change into Azure Key Vault secrets. So you're updating secrets there, and all 3 systems automatically get latest secret from Azure Key Vaults. So that is another benefit to use the Azure Key Vaults. So we have these 4 resources, and then we're creating one more, which is the Azure Data Factory. And this Azure Data Factory, we have a pipelines, and this pipeline read a data from a blob storage. And in this blob storage, we have a file which is a customer feedback.csv. And here we have feedbacks. So file can be CSV or JSON or any other format. And this, it can have a single file or it can have a multiple file as well. But for this demo, I have used a simple file, and which is only one file, which is a customer feedback.csv. So now this pipeline is reading a data from this file from blob storage, and it's reading each feedback one by one, and it's passing that feedback to a Azure Cognitive Service. And this Azure Cognitive Service apply a sentiment analysis and return a result to a Azure Data Factory. So Azure Data Factory will perform this by each and every feedback. So once it's finished that sentiment analysis for each record in this file, it applies some transformation and store the final result into a Azure SQL database. So this is the very high level design we have used in this demo. So before we see a demo, let's see how you can integrate your Azure Cognitive Service with Azure Data Factory. So for that, you have Azure Data Factory, and inside your Azure Data Factory, you have a pipelines, and you have another service which is Azure Cognitive Service. And it has Azure Cognitive Service for a language you have created, which do a text analytics. So as we created this service, we have 2 important points, which is REST API endpoints and a key, API key. So now Azure Data Factory have a web activity, and this web activity we are passing two important information, which is API, REST API URL or endpoint, and a key, and then it's going to call Azure Cognitive Service. Azure Cognitive Service apply a sentiment analysis on that particular feedback, and it return back to a Azure Data Factory. So it's very easy and you can do very quickly this integration. So now let's go back to here in a demo. So for this demo, I have these main resources I have used. So these are the five main resources I have used. Like I have Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Server, Azure Data Factory, Azure Keywords, and a sentiment analysis. This is a service for a language. So let's start with the keywords. So this is the keywords I have used, and in this keyword I have a secret. And as I have a two source data source, one is a blob storage and one is Azure SQL Server database. So that's why I have a two secrets. So I'm storing that secrets in this keyword. So this is for blob storage and this is for Azure SQL database. So it's hold the connection string or secrets here. And there is a one important thing. So if you want to use these secrets in your Azure Data Factory, then you have to give a access policy. So that is here. And here you just need to create access policy for your Azure Data Factory. For my Azure Data Factory is this, and I have already given. So it's few button clicks away, you can do that. Once you have that, then and then you can access that secrets into keywords. Otherwise you won't get access in your, or you won't able to easily access using the Azure Data Factory directly without giving permission. So this is a keywords. Now let's move into a storage account. So this is a blob storage account, and inside blob storage you can see that I have three different containers. So my file will be land in here. So here you can see that I have a customer feedbacks, and I can show you how it will look. This is a very simple file. So here I have a customer ID, I have a product and feedback. And you can see that I have like a Azure Data Factory. So I'm saying this is a very good service and I really liked it. And there are something like power apps. I'm just saying it's okay. And somewhere I'm saying that, see this one. Okay. So these are the feedbacks I given in here as well. So this is a negative one. So this is a sample data in my file, but in real time you have millions data, and it won't be that much simple. You have a complex file or big paragraphs or like that. So let's go back. So, and I don't have any file in my staging container, or I don't have any file in a final container. So this is a final container. So here I will get a file after applying the transformation. And here I will get data which aggregation. So I only need how many feedbacks are positive, how many feedbacks are negative, and how many feedbacks are neutral. So I need those summary information in here in a final container, which is just a feedback container. And staging container hold the staging calculations as a staging area. So once result of transformation is stored here before sending to a Azure SQL database. So that is my source, which is Azure Blob Storage, and this is my sink or destination data source, which is a Azure SQL database. So here you can see that at the moment I have a table, but you will see that at the moment is empty. Oh, I missed it from. So at the moment no rows, but when I run my pipeline, you will see that here you will find some rows. And this is a sentiment analysis. service. And once you create that resource in here, you will see in here in overview, you will see this URL. You will see few information regarding to that, and here you will see that studio. And if you go to here, you will see more information like where you can use a sentiment analysis. You will get some ideas like it can summarize big documents, classify a text, it understand the question and conversation language as well, like question and answer kind of things, and it summarizes text. So for this purpose you can use this because this and translate as well. So these are the things and very useful information here. So now let's close this one. So this is a language one, which is a cognitive service, and here you can see the key and endpoints. So this is a very important things. In order to consume this service in Azure Data Factory or Power BI or Azure Synapse Analytics or Azure Logic Apps, you need a endpoint and you need a key. This key is very important. So we will see in Azure Data Factory because we're using this URL and we're using this key in order to use this cognitive service. So that is a language service, and this is the Azure Data Factory. So when you launch a studio, you will see like okay, I haven't launched it. Okay, let me launch it. So you can launch that way. So you can redirect to Azure Data Factory. So here you will see a pipelines. So this is a main landing page, and here you can see that browse history, and you will see like what you can do, like you can ingest your data, you can orchestrate your data, you can transform your data, and you can use a SSIS package as well. And here you will see more information regarding new things, and these are the main module here. And this is a learning center, which is a newly added features. And here you will see, if you like to know more about Azure Data Factory, then you can see here, you can quickly start it, you can use the tutorials, there is a video as well as available template gallery as well. So these are the things, and this is the manage tab. So here you can manage your Azure Data Factory resources. You can create a link service which is few button click away, and you can see that who is using your link service and JSON code as well. So let's see, start from here. So this is a link service, and you can see that JSON code. So behind the scene is generate a JSON code for each and every components when you create using the Azure Data Factory in a portal. Here you will see that who is using your link service, and let's open this one. So this link service is user Azure keywords, as I said earlier. So you can see that how secure it is. Based on this, you don't know which blob storage I'm using for this pipeline, this data factory. So because I'm just using these secrets, and these secrets know which blob storage we are using for this demo. So that's it. So that's a very secure, and it's a recommended way to use at least a keywords rather than directly use a connection thing, which is a static information. So this is the keywords. Same way, Azure Blob link service. Same way I have Azure SQL database link service as well. And here also you can't say that which database or which user or login information I have used to connect to this link service, because all information stored in these secrets. And then I have a key vault one. Actually, first is key vault one, and then you can create another two link services. Here I'm just providing the key vault URL. That's it. And I'm using the system assign manage identity. And if I click here, then it will connect to a successful. You can see that. If it's failed, then you will get idea in here. It will fail, and it will be in red, and it gives some error message as well. So first you need to create key vault link service, and then you can create other link service, because you are using the key vault link service in a to get a secrets, because this is a child link service I'm using to get these secrets. So these are the link service for this demo. And let's go to here. And this is a pipeline, which is a sentiment analysis using the Azure Data Factory. Before that, I can give you a little bit overview of activities. So this is the activities in Azure Data Factory. So you can see that you have copy activity, a data transform activity, you have others Azure service activity like Azure function, Databricks, and many more. You can see this general activity here. These all are the general activities. And you will see iterative activity like for each loop and if and switch loop as well. You just need to draw a drag and drop. That's it. Once I run this pipeline, I will show you how you can do as well. So this is Azure Data Factory, and this is my pipeline. So my pipeline, as I said earlier, is looking the data from a blob storage. You can have here blob storage, Azure Data Lake Gen 2, or even SQL or on-premise as well. So at the moment, it's looking the data from a blob storage, which is here in this file this in container. So it's looking the data into this file, and so at the moment it has a 9 row. So if you go to here, so this will look for that containers and pass that 9 row to a for each loop. And this for each loop run for 9 times, and it's apply a sentiment analysis, and it store the result of sentiment analysis into a temporary append variables. And then once it finishes applying sentiment analysis for 9 records, it will store the result into Azure Blob Storage. And then we are using the Azure Data Factory mapping data flow, because sentiment analysis is just returning the score, but it's not telling me for which customer. And there are few information I needed. I need to join source file as well as a result file. I need to join them, and I need few information from both file. So that's why I have used a mapping data flow here. So this is a very quickly, but let's run this one. This is a integration runtime, which is a 6 important component in Azure Data Factory. As we said, it's a platform as a service and it's a serverless. But to run your pipeline, it's need a compute infrastructure. And this integration runtime provide a compute infrastructure. So I have used a auto integration runtime because my source and sink both are in a internet, public internet. But if your source and sink, any one of them are on-premise or not in public internet, then you need to use another integration runtime, which is a self-hosted integration runtime. And if your source or sink, anyone or somebody in your Azure Data Factory pipeline, if using SSIS package, then you need a SSIS integration runtime. So there are 3 integration runtime which provide a compute infrastructure to run your pipeline. So I have just turned on that, so you can see that green marks here, and now I can run my pipeline. So this is a debug button. So without triggering your pipeline, you can debug as well. So that I just started. So you can see that I have here spec code parameters and I have file name parameters to make it dynamic. So same pipeline can work for more than one business outcome because they are slightly different, but they have a few columns are common. So based on a spec code, it will read that file, and based on that it generates a sentiment analysis. So before we see result, we just see a property here. So this is a setting property in each activity you will find, and you will see that this one is connecting to this blob storage and passing here parameters. That's it. So it will pass information up in runtime to a for each loop. This is a for each loop, and you see that here I'm just passing the output of this activity, which is a previous activity, which is this activity. You don't need to remember syntax here, because you can just select a previous activity, which is a feedback records, which is this one. So that's it. It will automatically give. You just need to add your value. But I think we already have, so this is the one. So, and then this is a for each, yeah, we have looked at that one. And inside the for each loop, we have a sentiment analysis service. So here we have use of web activity to connect to another Azure service, which is a sentiment analysis. And here in setting, you need to pass a URL. So this is the URL of my sentiment analysis for language. And I'm selecting a method which is post, and I'm passing the body for each and every feedbacks. So you can see that here, this is a structure we need to follow. So here you have a documents, and inside that you passing the language, because it's support a more than one language. So here I'm choosing English language, and I'm passing the unique ID, but in my data I have a customer ID which is unique ID. So, and here you passing the feedback. So this customer has given a feedback, and I'm passing that feedback to this document. So it go as an input of a sentiment analysis. And this is the important things if you want to use. So you have to add this in a header, and this is the key, as we saw earlier, endpoints and key. So this is the key which need from a language service, and you can add this information. So that's it. So by applying these things, you are now able to connect a cognitive service, and cognitive service run and store the result into here. And here you can see that it's just appending in a JSON value. So it's output of a previous activity, which is a sentiment analysis. So you can see that this is the output and document, and we are using ID. And here we using the sentiments, which is a score. So that's it. So now let's go back to here. And this is a blob. So here we are using the web activity to write down output in a blob storage. You can use a copy activity as well, but I have used a web activity. And in setting, you can see that we are passing the URL of blob storage, and we passing the file name. And here you can see that we are appending a timestamp as well dynamically, and we saving as a JSON file. And here we are using the put method, and here we are passing the result of sentiment analysis, which hold in append variable, and we using the system assign manage identity, and that's why we have to pass this one, and API version, and which kind of the blob, so type of the blob. So that's it. And here we have used mapping data flow. So this file, which is a original file, which is in a CSV, which is in a in container, feedback dash in container. And this one is a result of the sentiment analysis, which stored in a staging area, which is in a JSON format. So if I show you those files now, so this is a source file, which is a CSV. And let's go back here. And this is now it has a file because we have run a pipeline. And this is a JSON file. But you can see here results, which is like ID and sentiments, like positive, negative, or neutral. That's it. But that information is not useful unless and until we join them with the original data source, because we need to know for which product this score is. So these are the one. So that is one. So we are joining now JSON file and CSV file in here. This is a JSON file and this is CSV file. So we're joining them, and we are doing a group by because we need to know how many sentiments, how many feedbacks positive, how many negatives, and how many are neutral. So for that we have used a group by settings here. So here you can see that based on our sentiments, and we applying a count of that. We just counting them It's as a total one, like how many positive, how many negatives, and how many neutrals. And we are storing them into a Azure Blob Storage, which is the original container, in a feedbacks container. And here we're storing the result of this join into a Azure SQL database. So you can see that you can have more than one inputs and you can have more than one outputs, and you can do transformation like join and group by and many more, and you can preview here as well. That is a very good things here, because without run your pipeline you can preview as well, because I have a enable a data flow debugger, and behind the scene is use a Spark cluster. So if you don't need, use better to turn it off, otherwise you will get charges for that. So you can preview it here. So total I have 9 records, and you can see I have a sentiments as well. So for Azure Data Factory, I'm saying that it's a very simple sentence that this is a good service and I really liked it. So it's give a positive one. But for this one, it's give a negative. Okay, because I'm saying it's a very bad service and system is not working currently. Here also negative, but let's see neutral one. So this is a neutral one because I'm saying Power Apps is okay. So it's given neutral one. So this is a very, very simple sentence, but in real time you have a very complex sentence as well. So each and every activity here you can preview it by just refreshing here. So that is a mapping data flow. And here this plus icon means you can add a act task here, transformations. These all are transformation available. You can see that so many is here. So you just need to select it and that's it. It added in here. And then you need to select a properties. You just need to add, because here I'm adding the derive properties. So I'm just typing new column and I just hard code it. That's it. So you will see that that's it. This I added one derive column or any calculation as well, and you will see that here I have now 4 columns. I can preview as well here by refreshing this. So this is a mapping data flow, and while it's previewing it, let's see if it's taking some more time or so. So while it's doing that, let's go to here. So this we already have seen which file we have in staging area, and now we're going to see here in a final container. So here you will see that summary, like how many feedbacks are positive, how many negative, and how many neutral. So this is the one summary I got it, because I have total 9 feedbacks. And if I going to see here, now if I run this query, you will see there is a more data available. And you can see that you have more information, like you have let's see here. So you can see that you have a custom original information, which is customer ID and product name and feedback, and this is a sentiments, positive, negative, or neutral. So you will get idea which product you need to improve. So ultimately you improve a customer satisfaction as well. So that is this one. I think now we're going to see in Azure Data Factory. Oh yeah, you can see here result as well. And this is the new column I have added, which is in here, derive column. You can have a complex calculation as well, because there are lot of functions available which use a Scala, but I have just hard coded things. So now let's come here. So as it's already run successfully, so let's see each and every steps here. So you can see that this is a run date, because I need my file with concatenation with this date and time, which is when pipeline runs at current time and date, I need to concatenate a file name. So for that I have used that variable, and this one is a lookup activity. and you will see that it has a 9 records because I have a 9 record in my blob storage for that file. So these are the output of lookup activity. So it passing this 9 information to a for each loop. So here you can see that it has a 9 as a count. So now my for each loop run for a 9 times, and it's pass this feedbacks one by one, and it return a sentiments. So here you can see that it passing is calling this sentiment analysis, and is passing this information. Most of the feature are deprecated, but it's still working like that. And then let's see here another example. So here we are passing that happy to work using this, and same time I'm doing every day and it's easy. So this is a positive thing. So if I see in here, I think it's third one. So you can see that it has a score here. So this is a confidence score, and it can be between 0 to 1. So here score is positive because yeah, I think we haven't seen a score, so it's directly giving it's 1. Here you can see this all both are 0 0, but sometimes you have something in point like 99 or 0.75 or like that. So this is the sentiments results, and you can see for one more example as well here. Here it's give negative, and that's why here, because it's give high score for negative, but sometimes it's in a point rather than 0 or 1. And based on that, it identifies this is positive, negative, or neutral. So this applied, and result of sentiment analysis hold in this variable, append variable, and now we are writing them in a Azure Blob Storage. So you can see that this is the URL of my blob storage, and this is I'm concatenating with the file with a new timestamp, and these are the results like ID and sentiments. So this information I have in my JSON file in a staging container. And finally my data flow work, and data flow is writing it's writing a data into here. You can monitor as well, and you will see that it's writing in 2 different source or sink or destination. And here you can see that how many rows it has written as well, and you can see many information here regarding to performance as well. So this is a sentiment analysis pipeline, and you can monitor them in here as well, because we have debug one. So you can see here, you can select this and you can monitor it here if you like to monitor in a case there are some issues. And you can see that what is input and what is output as well. So this is a sentiment analysis. Now let's go back to presentation. So we have already seen how you can easily integrate your Azure Data Factory and Azure Cognitive Service. Same way you can use Azure Synapse data integration pipeline, or you can use Azure Logic Apps or Azure Function or Power BI to use this cognitive service. So we have seen this demo. So in order to use this demo in your side, you can create these resources. If you like to do, you just create these resources, and then you can use a source from GitHub. And now I would like to give you some key takeaway or conclude this session. So we have seen Azure Data Factory, which help you to do data movements and data transformation. It help you to do orchestrate your pipelines and automate them. And as you know now, it's a platform as a service and it's a serverless. And you can easily integrate your Azure Data Factory with other Azure services. For example, Azure Machine Learning, Azure Databricks, or Azure Function, or Azure Logic Apps, and many more. So this is a very quick overview of Azure Data Factory, which we have seen in this session. Then we have seen Azure Cognitive Service. So as you know now that it summarizes a big document and provides sentiments. It can do for simple, it can do for complex. And in some scenario, if it not work as a part of pipeline, because you need to do some transformation, then you can use a mapping data flow, because mapping data flow is supporting REST API. So you can use this cognitive service REST API in your mapping data flow, and it supports a wide range of language. So it's not only supporting one language, but it's supporting more than one language. I think around 60 languages. So what it will do, it understand a common topics and trend in your data, and it give you a deeper understanding about your customer sentiments. So you can improve your customer service, you can improve products, and it's a win-win for you and customers if you apply this sentiment analysis. And then we have seen a demo. So in this demo, we read feedbacks from blob storage. Then we apply a sentiment analysis on each and every feedbacks on your source file. And then we applied some transformation, and we have stored the result into Azure SQL database. And we have stored the final result, like how many are positive, how many feedbacks are negative, or how many are neutral in a Azure Blob Storage in a main container. So with that, I would like to thank you for attending this session, and I'm now open with a question.
Awesome. Well, of course, I don't know if you noticed, I was smiling the entire time. I'm like, this is such a great session. Thank you, Alpha. I'll say this, if you don't mind. Really, truly, like I know we were just coming off of a few weeks ago. We had done like a the MS Ignite, kind of review session, and this is a type of content that I'd love to see there. That's one of the things that it's like this is spot on. It's perfect. Some of the stuff you touched on of, I'll be honest. When we were planning this session, I was thinking, oh, there's going to be a lot of code. There's going to be a lot of things, and it really is a low code approach, right?
Yeah.
It's a low code serverless approach that you've kind of shown everyone. So, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's very easy to implement as well. So like anyone can do this. Like if you have a background of developer or DBA or like that, and you know the logics, then this is very easy. You can build as well.
Right, and even the last few notes, like that last slide, kind of hit home for me, because I'm looking at like, it's very easy, or at least in my mind, it's very easy to take some of the stuff that we all have in our businesses or customers that we're working with and say, all right, as long as you have a good workflow, a documented workflow, a plan, or whatever else, that looks like it's relatively easy to translate into something like this. So, plus some awesome bells and whistles that you showed us.
No, yeah, I agree with that, right? So from my aspect, looking at the data pipelines and whatnot, that's actually phenomenal. Because this is great stuff. And data, as we know, data is exploding. Everybody is actually trying to get into data now. So looking at this, like this is real in action, right? Rather than just speaking about it, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I don't see any questions from our viewers. However, folks know that if anybody's been watching the show, they always know I have at least 2 questions, and some of them are going to be easier than others. But one thing I picked up on, Alpha, and I love Azure Key Vault. It's so versatile; it can be used all over the place. I noticed that you were using access policy. Is there a reason you're using access policy and not RBAC, or is it something that's not yet supported?
Yeah, actually we need for Azure Data Factory, or I think Synapse we don't need maybe, but for Azure Data Factory we need that access policy if we want to use that.
Okay.
So yeah, but there is option available if you want to use RBAC as well. So there is when we create.
I know there's some things where it's like some parts of the environment sort of support it, other parts are still use it at your discretion, but you might have to create a separate RBAC custom policy or whatever to kind of get it to flow. So awesome. So the other question, and it's interesting you said Synapse, and you're kind of leading me to the next question. I think there's a little bit of, at least in my mind, there's a little bit of confusion, but is this, when we talk like the pipelines you were showing, is that really Azure Synapse pipelines, or is there a delineation?
Actually, we can do same demo in Synapse as well without any code change or anything. It works in both sides. Yeah, because Synapse have a data integration pipeline, and in this area is not much difference. So yeah, it will work because I have given one session for same thing, but
Yeah,
using Azure Synapse Analytics. Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yes, I know. A few questions. It's folks have asked me that too. I'm like, I'm not sure, but we have a session coming up. I'll ask somebody.
That means you're coming up again in our session to present that then.
So the only other question I had, I know I said two, but maybe three. I'll sneak a
Yeah,
third one in.
that's fine.
We talked about like staging of data, but can these, like, as you're building this, can you have separate branched environments? Like if folks wanted to go like a dev prod or staging production,
Mm.
and how would they go about that, if you don't
Uh,
mind?
yeah, actually, it's actually it depends on your company policy. But where I'm working with client, they like to have a separate. So we have separate storage for dev, test, SIT, pre-prod, and prod, and they have the same structure like containers is same way like in staging and main container.
Okay,
Yeah, for all business outcomes because we're using parameters and we dynamically concat them, and sometimes same pipeline works for more than one business outcome. So yeah, so that's why we follow that standards. But
awesome.
I haven't seen that people are using same storage for both dev test. For security purpose, it's always good to have a separate one. However, we have a access and security we can provide, but still it's better to have a separate one. Yeah,
Cool. Thank you for sharing that up. At least
yeah,
for everyone listening, not just me.
yeah,
No, that's actually
The
interesting you say that because what I've seen, at least in the enterprise space, when you're setting up the landing zone, right, you'll be setting up different subscriptions and management groups. So you'll have the
yeah,
management groups for production and then UAT. And so basically that pretty much trickles down, right? So your resource
yeah,
groups and your storage would be coming down if
yeah,
it's a dev environment. So yeah, I agree
yeah.
with you there. Absolutely.
And also it's easy to deployment via CI/CD pipeline as well because you're following same structure for dev test, SIT, and UAT for storage as well. So they
awesome.
exactly copy same storage which you have in dev to your other environment. So yeah.
Oh, of course. Now you're going to bring CI/CD. So, okay, one last question. I probably it's a lot. I'm running out, but what about version control? Can I utilize like GitHub or something like that to really apply some version control to this environment, or is there something built into Azure Data Factory and some of the stuff
Yeah.
that you showed?
Azure Data Factory we can store it like how we do for normal like APIs or other stuffs.
Hmm?
So you can set up a Git repository using UI as I said. I think I forget to show you. I think it's very quick. If it's open here, so so here you can see that I have connected with GitHub. So my source code is at the moment in GitHub, which I think I added a link in here as well. So here I have added it. My
Awesome.
mouse is look like not working, but it's yeah GitHub yeah.
It's late. It's for the mouse. We might have to pour some coffee on it or something, huh?
By the way,
Yeah.
we have a question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Abdul.
So yeah, Rakesh asked output data after sentiment analysis. How can we pass the data into a different DB, which can then connect to a UI?
So is it like your feedbacks is different DB? Is it question or can you please repeat it again?
Yeah, so it says the output data after sentiment analysis.
Yeah.
How can we pass the data into a different DB?
Okay. So you want to store a result into different DB output. Yeah, that you can configure it.
Yep.
Yeah, you can easily configure. Actually, mouse has some problem. Otherwise, yeah. Here you can have a different. If you want to store result into different DB, then here we can have a different. Like I have two sources and one sync one which is a blob storage and other one is a Azure SQL database. So here you can have a new branch and then you can have a new sync which is different DB. So you can have as many as you needed. If you have a slightly calculation different, then you can add here steps for that calculation. For example, union and then store here. And here you're storing just the output of this. So you can store the in different DB as well. Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. That's actually great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, great question.
Yeah.
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 Rakesh, did that answer the question? Rakesh, hopefully that did. And then do you have any follow up questions for that one? We'll see if they come back.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Like the integration between Azure and then GitHubs, and then we were talking before the session started about Databricks, right? So I see a lot of Databricks in my company because Databricks obviously is cloud agnostic, so you can use it in other public clouds other than Azure as well. So I think that's growing a lot. How much have you seen, and what are you seeing in the market?
Actually, I am seeing it. Azure Data Factory and Azure Synapse Analytics, maybe more and more than Databricks, because Databricks, Azure Data Factory can use for say small data or big data, or even Synapse Analytics as well. But for Databricks, is a bit costly, and mainly it's needed for specific scenario, like you have a huge amount of data and data is not in structure format or mix of all of them, and you need a Parquet file or those kind of files, then I think we can use the Databricks. Even though you can work same thing as your Data Factory in Synapse as well. Yeah.
Mm. Nice, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. And how does
Excellent.
compliance you work from a data aspect, right? I know, especially in the UK, GDPR and their other compliances.
Hmm.
Um, so can you talk about that?
Yeah, actually for that, if you use Azure SQL database, then they have data masking. So it will mask your data, like email ID or personal information, birth date or like that. It mask them in Azure SQL database. And Azure have more information as well, like if you have a banking area or you have different demands, then you can bring your own key as well, custom key to encrypt your data. And by default it gives some encryption, so when it during the source and sync between the transaction period, it will apply some integration is encryption as well, so your data is encrypted, so it's provide the security as well. But if you use Azure SQL database, then they have many things for GDPR as well. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, because I know
Right.
compliance is a major issue now with a lot of
Yeah.
companies, right? So,
Yeah.
um, especially in Europe, GDPR and other things are
Yeah.
now. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then encryption, right? We hear about security, so encryption obviously is top of mind.
Yeah.
Encryption at rest and encryption in motion. So
Yeah.
yeah, um, no, makes sense. Okay,
Okay.
Well,
should
I
be
would say this. So I don't know if I'm out of questions, surprisingly, but um, but if our viewers have any final questions, otherwise, Alpha, thank you so much. This is wonderful. Love the demos, love the depth here. It's just fantastic having you on, having you share with everyone. I felt like I was drinking from the fire hose, so that means that everyone else enjoyed it too. Um, but yeah, thank you for your time. Sorry that it's super late, but we
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much for allowing me to present this session. Thank you.
Hmm.
thank you so much,
Yeah.
and,
Thank you.
thanks everybody for your time. I hope you enjoyed the session, and
Yeah.
have a good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Thank you, everyone, and
Bye.
don't forget to subscribe.